Welcome back, everyone, on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, I hope everyone's having a fantastic fall day. You can see the leaves are scattered around behind me. So, fall is underway, and it won't be long before the rain and snow and everything else is moving in. I know. Get your vitamin D and stock up, right? Well, today I just wanted to kind of have a conversation about transformation. you know, the title, The Journey to Transform Culture of the book, as well as this YouTube channel, that can come across as a little bit like, well, what are we transforming? We liked it the way it was, and you have some folks that go back to a certain 3 years in their life when they thought everything was perfect. But if we really pull back the layers of it, what it is you found there's a space and time in your life when you virtually ignored the world around you and enjoyed just what you were doing at that time. Could have been a job you had, people you were hanging out with, whatever it was. And that's not a bad thing, to enjoy your life. It's a daunting thing to think of the world globally and try to think of, well, transformation, what does that look like? I've been living in the same, some people living in the same small town or city, whatever it is, and they haven't perhaps ventured out except to go on vacation, for a few days or a week, sort of a thing. And there are some who are well traveled. But I have found that, having been in the Air Force and traveled around a fair amount, that my concept of culture is big. It's global. I don't think of just, the local town or my family or my friends. I don't think of just that. I think of all of us. And that's one of the reasons, writing the book, The Journey to Transform Culture, isn't really just about, an organization. Although all of that is the genesis of how I developed. But along the way, through coaching, mentoring, and experiencing so many people, from all walks of life, that what you find is that there's so much detail in the tapestry of what all cultures are made of. There's such great beauty. There are also strands and veins of pure terror and horror, right? And we know this. But we can't project that over all of cultures. But what you do see is I do, in the course of my travels, have come across organizations, groups of people, teams, whatever. And you see where people do get frustrated because they get stuck. They get stuck in one facet or another. It could be communication, it could be team building, it could be sustaining an operation, it could be functionally getting work done and how to manage that and how to work on that sort of thing, organize it, um, problem solving. But but often I come into a group and what it is this. It's really perspective. We all have a different perspective. We all have a different perspective on life. We all have a different perspective on the origin of life, right? Whether that be spiritually, science oriented, otherwise, and all the different aspects of that. We all have different perspectives. And and in the functionality of life, we have a myriad of perspectives on that. How you get up and live your life and sequence your day is something that you've evolved, right? Something that you've learned and then incorporated different things that worked that you may have found out from somebody else that, and I can't remember where I found this out, to be honest with you, but I don't credit myself. When you get up, you wash your face. Don't know why, but when you do that, somehow it wakes you up. Maybe that's all it does. But, and there's other various things that you do in your sequence of getting ready for the day or getting ready to go, do your tasks, your work, whether you work from home or you go to work. Either way, there's a sequence of interaction, and then it becomes a social thing too now, because you got so many people have it. Wow, I've got my favorite coffee stop, right? Which is great, that adds flavor. And there's a certain the store owners and workforce there that you interact with, and hey, how you doing today? And that adds color and flavor to our lives, right? But we also have to be careful because we can get into these comfort zones, which are great in the moment of it. We don't think of it, as a negative thing, and I wouldn't either. But but we can limit ourselves to the possibility. What am I saying? We have to realize that everybody has their own little, sequence and their own little process and their own little way of handling things. And it's very difficult to overlay, well, this is right and this is wrong, perfectly right, perfectly wrong. Because even the folks who had best intentions going back hundreds and a few thousand years, have decimated the lives of so many in the pursuit of doing right, have hurt so many in wrong ways, right? And this is not only in big social interactions, but this is also true in individual lives. It could be the thing that you say to a person, is a thing. I often in the videos with, hit the good domino 3 to 5 times a day where you can, to uplift, motivate, inspire, and encourage folks, right? Why is that? To keep that perpetual momentum of positive outcomes, really. Keep that in play, keep that occurring, because you're more likely to see that then occur in inside and then externally to the people that you're doing that to or for. So with that in mind, we all not only have our own ways, but we also have the impact that we make. But we can also all get stuck. And we can get stuck looking at the entire world or a country or a geography or a people through the straw of our locality, of where we live or where we have lived. And if we don't open ourselves up to change, which is really what you need to do to transform, then you won't transform. So the question is, well, why do we want to transform? Well, you can back that up pretty quickly and say, as human beings, we're supremely inefficient. Even when we think we're being really efficient, we still have miles to go to improve. An organization might be functionally pretty fairly efficient, but where human connection is concerned, team building and the healthiness, we'll say healthy interaction versus toxic environments. It may be a supremely toxic environment, but they're getting the work done and out the door, right? People hate it there, but they're getting the work out the door. And so they might say, well, we get the job done. It's just how we do it. Sometimes if you make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. Well, sure. I've used that line myself a few times. And it is true that there's going to be no perfect environment. There's going to be no perfect process. Otherwise, there would be no need to improve it anyway. You would be perfect right out of the gate and you're good. But guess what? New materials, new technology, new ways of approaching problems, new perspectives, right? And we want to value those perspectives. I don't care who has the best idea. I don't care if it's like, a kid comes up and say, well, why are you doing it this way? Why don't you do it that way? It seemed like that would work better. If it's a good idea, I'm like, great idea. Don't judge the idea based on the person whose mouth it came out of because they're the CEO versus the brand new employee. If the brand new employee has a perspective, then, take it into account, because you never know. That brand new employee might be they may have had parents that were, engineers or whatever their background, right? Relative to their, we'll say that the parents had a profession, or maybe they were machinists or whatever it was, an expertise. They didn't go through formal training perhaps, but they picked up a lot along the way. And so when they're asking a question or, hey, why don't we do it this way? It seems like it would save us time and effort, energy, money, whatever. Regard that, because people are bringing, skills, insights, and intellect to your organization that you don't realize that they've picked up. Now, flip that over into culture. There are people who, when I graduated from high school, worked a little bit for a couple, 2, 3 years, and then I went into the Air Force and did 20, just a shade over 20 years in the Air Force. But what I noticed, and I did, because the Air Force had a great cross training program, I did a lot of different jobs and learned. I just love to learn. I'm a learner. Love to learn new ways of doing things, and I'm just very inquisitive that way. Well, oftentimes, and this isn't a judgment, I would come back home and people were doing the same thing they'd been doing 2, 3 years ago, right? Some 5 years ago, some 10 years ago. And that's fine. They're living their lives. They're doing that thing. But what people don't realize is that you've experienced all these different things, whether they be exposure to different people and how they do things, different processes, different product, if you're a manufacturer making different products, whatever it is. And they don't realize that you have that experience. They just see the you that you were when you left. And that you'll always be that to them, and that's fine. But they don't understand you have the ability to solve problems that they've never even thought of before in some cases. But that isn't to say any one person is better than another. That isn't the case. What it is to say is that even like I have grown children, one's in the medical side of the house, one's software engineer, another one's a photographer, and considerably different, professions, right? There are things that they know and problems that they've learned to solve that I've never encountered. They have a wisdom and an intellect, and they're bringing things to the table. So if I have a question about something, or if I'm not sure, especially where the software is concerned, I'll ask the question, right? I'll, kind of probe that out and go, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. What do you think? And that's what you have to have professional and personal humility. If you're going to transform culture, you can't overlay your very linear path in life. And if we're being humble, we have to all assume that we have a linear path, because there's always somebody who has, a broader spectrum of experience. That we have a linear path and we approach life with that perspective, then we're open to learning. We're open to transforming, right? We're open to figuring things out or finding new ways, or, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. What do you think? And you're inviting that. So there's a humility, but there's also an inquisitiveness. And it also, that vulnerability is gold. That's gold for your organization. It's gold in culture. It's gold in your homes. It's gold to have that approach. And it's gold to teach, young people who are developing that to have a humility about what they're learning, because there will be new information that comes along to inform their experience. Their experiences will inform that, right? So something that they may have learned in school, great, but it'll be significantly improved through the discoveries and advancement of science and technology, and even archaeology is digging up things that we didn't know, right? Which is forcing us to reassess, who we are and how we got, to be who we are. So these are the sort of things that this is why we have to have a personal and professional humility. We do that, we can transform. So why transform? To come back to our inefficiency. We're so inefficient because of our linear ways of living that we haven't learned how to figure out energy, right? I'm not touting that we need to turn the world into I know there are socialist countries out there, and, each country has to choose the sovereignty and the style that it needs to operate under. I typically align with the one I'm at. I believe in freedom, and I believe in all of that. And I believe, free market. But I also don't believe in all of that to crush humanity to benefit a few, because that's no longer a free market, right? So what does that mean? I'm just asking the question: is your medical care a service? Well, certainly they're serving you. They're giving you a service. But is it a service Is it some, there's a lot of things we do, energy, medical care. There's a few things out there that we put a price tag on that are vital for our humanity to survive. I'm not talking about, you know, uh, pushing people, just propping them up for no reason or bailing anybody out. What I am saying is there are some things that humanity needs: water, food, shelter, right? And these are areas of philanthropy. Well, don't you think it's kind of ironic that philanthropy, even the term philanthropy, has to exist in its own parallel stream because our societies haven't figured out that they need to be operating in a philanthropic way. How? Problem solving. Finding ways to get and clean water, finding ways to provide food, finding ways to provide medical care and to find a way for those costs to work. Energy, finding ways to provide energy. You drive those costs down. I'm making the case here for anybody where the dots and the gears start to align. You drive those costs down, what do you think happens? More consumers spend money on other things. They might buy a home, they might buy a car, they might buy other functional things they need, but other things that society has that they, need to invest in or to survive, right? Maybe they save money so that they can get through the next big storm. Maybe they're able to prepare, right? Instead of being always chasing their tail trying to figure it out. Meanwhile, rents and home prices are ridiculous. Energy costs are out of this world in general, overall, and they have been for a long time. All of these things have not served us. These are problems that are solvable. We've got probably tens of thousands of genius level mechanical, electrical, philosophical, you name it, social, all of it, geniuses out there that can solve these problems. But what we also have to do is get the bureaucracies to thin out their, 12-step program to get through our bureaucracy so that a good idea can be then approved and implemented, and then remove these shadowy costs to implementation that only exist to prevent those people who are coming up with good ideas from getting them into the world to be useful for folks. Instead of just trying to make, okay, let's say I come up with a way to for you to pull water right out of the air for your home. It'll reduce your water consumption by 55%. And I come up with a device. Now, I could sell that device for $10,000 and it would pay for itself in, well, we'll say 5,000. That's probably a little steep, 10. We'll say $5,000. Well, that would pay for itself pretty quickly. Use of water, energy, all that kind of stuff. And it would be an energy saver, all of these things. And it would be a great thing. Or, considering all the people there are and all the need that there is, do I need to sell it for $5,000, right? Do I need to just crush people because I have something that is going to solve a problem? We come up with a new way to do something or provide something, and the first thought of most is, how can I gouge the general population to such an extent that this is not even something that can be consumed or used by the general public at large, because of why? They can't afford it. They can't afford it. And they become overrun with the ability to have some of these things that might make their lives better. So essentially what happens is those who can afford, who are in a position to afford, the high, you can manage the high costs of these other areas I just talked about. Those folks don't have a problem with going out and getting the thing, implementing the water thing or the this thing or the that thing. But the poorer families do. I'm not saying that anybody needs a free ride. We all need to figure out what our skills knowledge, skills, and abilities are and apply those and, and work our way through life. That's just life. That's fair. But do we need to crush the same people? I don't think we need to crush anybody. And I think we have enough genius level problem solvers out there. This is a call to you, genius level problem solvers, right? And if you're a marketer, hey, fantastic. But what are you marketing, right? How are we solving problems? I don't need somebody to sell me another, hey, I've got a red shirt that looks like that one, and this red one's, got a thread. I don't care. I really don't care. We need to question what our motives are, what our purpose is, and start honing ourselves right into these problem solving efforts because we've got real big problems. We don't have cosmetic life issues as much. I mean, there's always going to be cosmetic life issues, surface level stuff. We've got deep issues culturally. Why do we need to transform culture? If you're asking that question, then clearly you have no problems with the price gouging, the high cost of resources, the medical care, you name it, right on down the line. And if you're in that position not to care, hey, go on about your business. But you might be, because of that, in a position to do something about it. You have the more free time, more free resources to apply and to tackle some of these issues. And I just threw a few in there. There's plenty more. In your locality where you live, I'm sure there are issues, right? In the small town that I grew up in, they want to blow up the population so they can, drive up rent and costs and all and real estate and all this stuff. But gosh, don't wait for 10 more years to add a second lane to some of the thoroughfare of traffic. So you got all these traffic constraints and bottlenecks just jammed up because somebody's trying to, people who own these different real estate and apartment complexes and all that, they aren't even from here, most of them. They're groups that are investing, and they're doing this all over the country. Meanwhile, people trying to live in these communities can barely, what used to take them 5 to 10 minutes to get to work and so forth, now it takes them 30 or 40 minutes just to get a few miles down the road. And it's pretty pathetic if you think about it. Very poor planning, very poor forethought. And why? Well, let's see if we can't make that quick buck real fast. And we don't really care about the population and the impact of that. And I use that as an example. You probably have examples for your locality where you live. And they may be very small and some may be very large. And you're asking yourself, well, why? I use road work because it's pretty straightforward. You've been working on the same road for 5 years. Why? Well, it takes that much time to pull enough funds to pay for the road work. Didn't take you any time to build that apartment complex to approve that, right? So, and you need livable housing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking, having livable housing. Do that. But you got to have a plan, right? These problems can be solved. Don't start a project if you can't finish a project, right? Don't leave it halfway. I mean, you wouldn't, dig up a sidewalk and then risk people falling into a hole and all these other things just to leave it sit there for 3 years because, well, I need to save up money for the concrete. Well, there was concrete there before. It had a crack or two in it, but it was basically repairable. See? So, not ranting about these subtle things, but I'm using these subtle things to extrapolate on the larger things. Food, shelter, right? Medical care, energy costs. These are significant, areas where we need to figure out a way with our genius level aptitude that we've got, not only in the United States, but everywhere else, to drive these costs down. My challenge is they should cut those in half. If you want to put the fire to the feet of those who are in charge in your local and national and beyond, your governments and those people who are decision makers in your bureaucracies, is challenge them. We need to get the cost down. How do we do it? If it's taken us 9 or 10 months to teach kids in school these subjects. Well, could you do it in 7? Yeah. Well, how could it be done? Well, it could be done this way. Okay. Do the math. 2 months less of energy costs going towards your municipalities. Turn your schools into, where they have gyms, use it for that. The libraries, study areas. You got classrooms, you know what? Makeshift offices, short-term, lease a little space for an office for a business. I mean, you can make a little bit of money on the side that would well exceed and probably pay for the next school year. I mean, look, folks, I just popped that one right off the top of my head. You got homeless people, but during the day, at night, churches are closed, right? Municipal buildings are closed, but they're all facilities where we have people sleeping outside. Well, we've got people in the churches and different aspects of the community that are willing to volunteer and rotate that volunteerism to open a shelter. They don't have to be there during the day. That can be managed and figured out. Figure it out. Solve the problem. Let's not walk around in circles and go, well, I need more money and need more money. Yeah, you need some more money, probably. Where does it come from? It comes from making improvements. How do those improvements come from? Where do those come from? Those come from you getting your heads together and solving the problem, brainstorming the problem and coming up with solutions. And when you do that, you're going to solve these problems. But you're not going to do it sitting back going, well, they never solve these problems. That's because we all have to get in and solve these problems, right? We all have to participate. I do it. I'm working on my programs to help people solve problems. And you can do it not only for your home and in your locality, but also, local municipalities, larger governments, all of that. So don't look to somebody else to necessarily solve it. I mean, obviously I'm, throwing a call out there to solve the problem, but I can go into your community and help solve that problem. Happy to do it. Brainstorm, get people together. Let's figure it out. And that's definitely something that could be done, but we need to make problem solvers out of our culture. And when we start transforming our culture in that way and we become better problem solvers, then guess what? Your lives become better. You can have more thriving lives. And if you're really concerned about the next generation and 2 generations and 3 generations down the line, then you need to start thinking this way. Not just thinking, well, I'm going to live the next 30, 40, 50 years and, that's not my problem. That'll be their problem. It's a terrible way to look at our planet, right? We've got 9 billion people or something like that on planet Earth. We got some problems to solve for everybody, to be able to live in healthy lives on this planet. And these are solvable problems. So let's quit acting like they're not solvable. The journey to transform culture starts with each of us. And if it's changing your routine, 1 or 2 days a week to do something different, to change those tides, then do that. If it's you're part of clubs and organizations that, just do frivolous things, hey, that's great. You got to you got to enjoy life too, no doubt about it. But how about putting some of that horsepower and that brain power to work to solve some other problems, right? You have somebody who's, you got a farmer who's trying to figure out how to do something, but needs 2 or 3 people to help. But, is maybe struggling. Hey, how about helping that farmer out? You know what I mean? Send 2 or 3 teenagers over there with some horsepower to help them, clean out a barn one day or something, right? Random stuff. Start looking beyond your fence line and start looking deeper inside of yourself. And I think you'll understand there is a need to transform culture because right now we're not solving the problems we need to create better, thriving lives for everyone. And it can start in our organizations where we can get better at becoming better problem solvers and then branch out from there to become better problem solvers in our community. And, quite frankly, when we're doing that, we are pushing that domino 3 to 5 times a day for the good to uplift, motivate, inspire, and encourage folks. And I encourage you to do that. When we do that, we are improving not only our local and the broader culture at large, but we're improving ourselves and we're improving, how we think and our perspectives and how and what we can come up with. Then we have a greater thirst and for knowledge and a humility about what we do know and how little it is compared to what there is to still be known out there. So be coachable, be teachable, right? And then help coach and teach others. All right, folks, just touching base today a little bit on, answering some of the question about why transform culture, what the whole point of that is, but also to look deeper into the future. Don't just live for tomorrow or the next year or the next 100 years. Live your life and let's start solving problems to a vision of what our planet looks like 1,000 years from now. Start thinking in those terms. And we start thinking in those terms, all of a sudden, I don't have time to be in disagreements over silly stuff. I don't have time to play these social games of who's this and who that. What you find is that your focus now becomes about how are we going to solve clean water, clean air, food, all these things. Those are our priorities. Energy, medical care, all that stuff. So let's get on board with solving that stuff. All right, folks, hit like, share, and subscribe. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you're having a fantastic fall day. All right. I hope you're out there raking leaves or helping somebody else rake leaves. All right. Thank you. And have a fantastic day again. We'll see you next time.